Hello everyone, I'm Mike Gruss, Editor-in-Chief of Defense News and Military Times. Welcome to this session on Cyber and Networks, sponsored by Shift 5. My guest today is Jessica Carroll, Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs at Shift 5. Prior to that, she worked at the House Armed Services Committee and with the Joint Chiefs and the intelligence community. Jessica, thanks for joining us. So let's jump right in. We're at AUSA. There's a lot of talk about multi-domain operations. We've heard about JADC2 and CJADC2, and we've seen this focus on connecting all assets on the battlefield. It's the sensor-to-shooter philosophy. So how are you seeing the government consider some of these opportunities and the challenges that come with this new idea of connecting everything?
Absolutely. So I think we really saw this emerge in the 2018 National Defense Strategy when we considered how the interconnected nature of our allies and partners, in addition to the United States Joint Force, was imperative to the way we conducted warfare. I have seen a significant increase in the attention and the forward-leaning momentum from the department, the various services, the Joint Chiefs themselves, in understanding how we do take advantage of what that connectivity looks like. And it has to go beyond just the United States, and that's why I appreciate you bringing up CJADC2A, AP. And I think it's important as that name continues to change as we consider how we work together. We've seen it in Ukraine, we see it with Israel right now. The relationships that we have to be built upon not just the way that we share tactics, but the way that we share data and how we connect the assets across just the joint force and services, as well as how we connect across our allies and partners. I think AUSA is probably one of the most important events that we have in Washington, D.C. that highlights the importance of connecting across domains, whether it's upstairs, we have FLRAA and FARA. Down here, we're looking across at extremely sophisticated ground systems. And if we don't figure out how to bring these systems together in one connected ecosystem, then we won't be able to, I think, consider the threat environment that we have today, let alone what the future will look like.
And I think it's really important you brought up allies, because that's been a big push that we've seen, I think, for years, but it seems like it's accelerating. You mentioned some of the assets that are being increasingly connected. You think about a vehicle that's connected in ways that maybe it wasn't 5 years ago or 10 years ago. What opportunities does that create? What's the advantage on the battlefield there to have these connected assets this way?
I think one of the most important opportunities that we see is the way that data can be used for a multitude of different mission use cases. So whether or not data is being used to create a better understanding of what the maintenance requirements are for a particular either fleet of assets or particular assets individually, or we're looking at it to
that's kind of the predictive maintenance that's become
the hot topic,
yes.
Right? And understanding how we buy down unnecessary risk. I mean, that's something that the Joint Chiefs has always focused on. There's inherent risks at any mission, any strategy that we have, and looking at the ways to use data, particularly data that can come off of platforms, is an inherent opportunity to buy down that risk while we understand that it's increasing in other areas.
When we talk about this data, how do you get more out of it? Meaning, how does it become more valuable? I mean, every sensor, every bit of information seems to be collected somehow. Maybe not stored, but maybe not transmitted. But it seems like there's just a tremendous amount. What does that look like, and what are some of the ways of thinking of this data and what it's used for, and even how it's collected?
Absolutely. So data is storytelling. And if we were to be able to use data in its most comprehensive form, it would not just tell one story, but it would tell multitudes. So if it was, further describing pattern of life based on normal characteristics and performance aspects of a platform, or if it was telling, a different story about where potential failures of components could be. But even beyond that, that data can be used in various ways that help project what a future posture could be. I think the way that we think about readiness right now could be greatly enhanced if we think about the way that data, cyber data, can be used to further describe what cyber health can be as far as readiness. That's an aspect that I see growing going as far as conversation across both the department and across Congress. And if we were to do a more thorough articulation and incorporation of that cyber data into what we consider readiness, I think the storytelling that could to posture the joint force and as well as our allies and partners would be significantly impactful.
Can you elaborate on that just a bit, like what that looks like, or what you learned from some of that cyber health data?
Absolutely. So I think what we've done very well in the past is, give a full picture, whether it's from the Joint Chiefs to the Secretary, of understanding where our assets are, how many do we have the right operators to operate them. But beyond that, we need to know what is the health of these platforms, beyond just having the right fuel, beyond having just the right ammunition, or the right pilots for that matter, if we're speaking about aircraft and air domain. We need to think about the cyber health in a way of what is good, what's normal, and where is the cyber readiness of that particular asset or fleet of assets today. And I think where we can consider what the future looks like is how we're incorporating a baseline of gold data that's collected off of these platforms and using that to articulate what good looks like, what does healthy look like, what does secure look like, and how can we use that cyber data to make sure that there is a good articulation of where vulnerabilities could be if not already found.
I think sometimes the conversation on cyber networks can feel, I don't want to say academic, but it feels very like from a much higher level. What do you hear from warfighters about data collection and how data is used?
Absolutely. I think one of the most exciting parts of where we see warfighters engaging is on the data aspect. And this is across the owners, this is across the operators, this is across the maintainers. They want to understand how the data, particular to a platform, can be used to help them understand their assets more efficiently, more thoroughly. I think a good conversation too is understanding, especially under the auspices of the new CDAO offices and how those are being fettered across the combatant commands, across the services. How is the data being built into a comprehensive and coherent strategy that can be repeatable in the future? How is it affecting the way that we consider our future national defense strategies? Where is it being built in to make sure we're investing in acquiring the right technologies? I think that's where we see the warfighters being excited, but also having a healthy degree of skepticism on making sure that any solutions, any investments that are being made to go after the right data sets are in fact going to be additive and they're going to be comprehensive. I think there's less of an appetite for single set solutions that don't tell a full story. Being able to access data, for example, the way that if we were to onboard into an aircraft, an air platform, or even a ground system here, being particular at AUSA, the story that data can tell is multifaceted. It's not singular, and I think that's where the warfighters are being kind of increasingly driven, and they're trying to drive the conversation, is making sure that data fits a multitude of scenarios that perhaps we haven't considered in the past.
I would imagine that the other part of that conversation is that they want to be able to trust the data that they're generating or that's being used. And so what's the conversation you're hearing about the veracity of that data and how accurate it is?
Absolutely. So I think there's very much a willingness and a want and a desire to trust the data, and particularly if it's coming off of a specific platform. But there is an appreciation that data, much like the information that we receive via news or via social media, can be compromised or tampered with. There's an appreciation that data can be affected in the same way. We've heard a lot of conversation around data poisoning. I mean, it's not unlike a concept of digital disinformation where we see data potentially being compromised by an adversary. And how does that affect what downstream techniques or processes that we're using that data for? But there's, on the flip side of that, because of that potentiality, there's a willingness to make sure that the right steps are taken, the right solutions are being found to secure the data from compromise, from tampering, to ensure the purity of that data as it's being used for an algorithm for AI/ML, if they're using that for particular aspects, or for predictive maintenance as an example.
Sure. Great. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Please join me in thanking Jessica as well as our sponsor, Shift 5. Coming up next, we have C4ISR Net reporter Colin Demarest, who will moderate a panel discussion on cyber networks. Thank you.